We're on the top of Daf Kuf Beis, and let's just review Rav Chizda's opinion. According to Rav Chizda, when you have Dvarim Hatu'unim Bracha Lachrem Bimkomon, then if you find yourself in a different location from the location that you began your Seuda, where you made your bracha, you don't have to make another bracha there because you're considered to have a kvius back in your original location. And we called it a gravitational pull. You're always pulled back there because you have to go back there anyway in order to recite a bracha achrona. So now the Gemara asks, Man Tana, which is the Tana that we learned yesterday on Daf Kuf Aleph in the Brisa with regard to Akiros, that if somebody was Oker, he left his original location, and he hadn't made a bracha achrona, then he's got to recite a bracha rishona wherever he finds himself, even in the case of Dvarim Hatu'unim Bracha Lachreim B'mkomo. He needs to be Mavarech a bracha rishona a second time around because of Shinui Makom. And the Gemara identifies that Tana in the anonymous Brisa that we learned yesterday as Rabbi Yehuda, the Sanya, because we learned in a Brisa, and this is a different Brisa than the Brisa that we learned yesterday, Averim Shayim Mesubim. So there's a group of people that were sitting together and eating, the Akur Aglehem, and they uprooted themselves before they recited a bracha achrona. Leilech lebeis haknes, they went to daven in the shul or lebeis hamedrash to learn in the synagogue. Kishem yotzim, when they leave their makom seuda, then ein te'unim bracha l'mafrei. They don't need to recite a bracha achrona because they intend to return to this place after they daven. Ukshem chozrim, and when they return, ein tunim bracha l'chatchil. They don't need a bracha l'fanel. So that's the Tanakama of this new Brisa that we're learning now. Amar Rabbi Yehuda qualifies this. And from the qualification of Rabbi Yehuda, we infer that the Tanakama did not have this qualification. He had an absolute rule that whenever you are oker aglayim and you find yourself leaving the original location, you don't need to make a bracha achrona. You can return to your original location. And if you're eating in a second place, you're still connected to your first place. It's dvar matunim bracha lachrem b'mkomon, and you don't need to make a bracha rishona. But Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda, he says, I'm only willing to accept this rule by medvar mamurim b'zman shenichu sham miktsas chaverim. Only if part of the group was left behind. They were not oker aglayim, so they remained stationary in the original location. That gives the other people, the members of the Chabur that left that location to go to the Beis HaKnesset, Beis HaMedrash, a gravitational pull to come back to rejoin their original Chabur. So the members of the Chabur that remained in the original location, they set a kvias to the Makom. But if everybody left the original location, they all vacated and they went to Shul, he's saying when they leave that place, they have to bench first. And wherever they find themselves in a new location, they'll have to make a new bracha rishona because Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the Chachamim. The Tanakama of this Brisa, the Tanakama of the Brisa is of the opinion that even if every last member of the Chabura left, they were all oker aglayim. When they come back to the original location and return home, they don't have to make another bracha. They can continue being mevarech. And now the Gemara is going to, and therefore the Brisa that we learned the Kuf Aleph on days, where we said that if they didn't leave anyone behind, then when they come back, they need a new bracha to continue eating. That reflects the Shita Rabbi Yehuda appearing in this Brisa, that Rabbi Yehuda only allows you to leave the makom without a bracha achrona and without making a bracha rishona if you left people behind. Leave behind a person who's older, a zaken, or maybe a chole, so that there's still a kvius. But in the absence of that, you're going to have to make a bracha achrona and then a bracha rishona. And that's the brayso that we learned on Daf Kuf Aleph. It is attributed now to Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara now has a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan had the view that shini makom eino tzarich levarech as an absolute rule with no exception. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there are no strings attached, no conditions that have to be met. If your intention is to leave and then return, you don't need to make any extra brachas. So the Gemara asks, we said that whenever the brayso uses the word akru, it means that they quickly left the original location with intention to return, because they have to return in order to recite a bracha l'achreya. And akru indicates that we're dealing with dvar matunim bracha l'achreya b'mkomon. You have to go back in order to make a bracha achrona. D'chein yotzim ein tunim bracha l'mafreik shein chozur ein tunim bracha l'chatchila. So that only because it was a situation of Zayin minim sheretz Yisrael nishtabcha b'hen, and it's dvar matunim bracha l'achreya b'mkomon, and you have to go back to the original place, then you don't need a bracha. However, the clear implication is aval dvarim she'ein tu'unim bracha achrei b'mkomon afilu rabbanon, even according to the rabbanon, because again the Tanakama here is the rabbanon, and kshein yotzim tu'unim bracha l'mafreya kshein chozrin tu'unim bracha l'chatchila. The only condition, the only scenario in which the Rabbanon lifted the responsibility, the obligation of a bracha was only in a case of dvar matunim bracha machreim b'mkomon, and we derive this from the word akru. Is therefore lemitevi tiyuvta the Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said in an absolute way, even if it's dvarim she'ein tu'unim bracha machreim b'mkomon, shinui makom is not machayev anu bracha. So the Gemara asks, we already on Daf Kuf Aleph had objected to Rabbi Yochanan with an irreconcilable brayso that contradicted Rabbi Yochanan. So Gemara says, Nema meha nami tevtiyuvta. Even if you'll find an answer to the original stira from the brayso to Rabbi Yochanan, but nevertheless, you'll have to deal with this stira as well. We have one tiyuvta and then another tiyuvta. So Rabbi Yochanan now wants to defend himself and answer this objection. The Tanakama, this brayso holds that as an absolute rule, without any conditions, in all scenarios, if your intention is to leave and come back, shinu makom eino tzarich bracha. Even it's dvarim she'ein tunim bracha l'achreim b'mkomon. V'hadik tani akru ragleihem. You were medayik in the lashon of the brayso that akru ragleihem implies that it's dvarim atunim bracha l'achreim b'mkomon, meaning akru ragleihem they should have made a bracha to complete their meal, because you have to make a bracha in the makom of suda. It's dvarim atunim bracha l'achreim b'mkomon, but they quickly or urgently had to leave their makom. Chachamim would say that even if it's a shahakal, you still do not have to make a new bracha when you're oker from one place to the other. But the brayso wants to give you the scenario of dvar matunim bracha l'achreim b'mkomon in order to tell you the extent to which Rabbi Yehuda went, in his opinion, the afilu dvar matunim bracha l'achreim b'mkomon, he's only going to allow you to get away without a bracha if you leave someone behind. That's when you have the time of kavua in our original makom. We don't have to make new brachas. Aval, but in the case of lo inicho mixes chaverim kshem yotzim tunim bracha mafreim kshem chozrim tunim bracha lechatchila. And even though you would have said that there's a kfiyas makom, even if everybody leaves, because it's dvar matunim bracha lachreim b'mkomon, so they gravitationally pulled to the original kviyas makom. No, Rabbi Yehuda says I must have the original kviyas of the chaverim still extant. I need someone, at least one member of the original chabura, to be there in the first location. Otherwise, even if it's dvarim atunim bracha lachreim b'mkomon, nevertheless you need a new bracha. Now the Gemara wants to bring support for Rav Chizda from a brisa. Then in the case of dvar matunim bracha lachreim b'mkomon, shini makom does not generate a chiyuv bracha. Tanya kavasei de Rav Chizda, chaverim shayu mesuvim lishtos yayin. Now yayin is one of the shevas haminim, so clearly it's a case of dvar matunim bracha lachreim b'mkomon. So they're drinking wine. V'yakar agleim. They had to leave, and they did not make a bracha achrona. V'chazru. Now they came back to their original location. Ein tzrichim levarach. They don't need a new bracha, and that supports Rabbi Chizda. That in the case of dvarim atunim bracha lachreim b'mkomon, we don't say that shini makom generates a chiyuv bracha. And the Gemara is equating two scenarios. One question would be: would they have to make a bracha in location number 2 if they want to eat somewhere else? And question number 2 is, if they want to continue eating when they return to the original location number 1, do they need a bracha lechatchila, bracha rishon? And the Gemara equates these two. I mean, Rav Chizda went very far. Rav Chizda said that if it's dvar matunim bracha lachreim b'mkomon, then even if they were mishana makom and they want to drink or eat in another makom, they don't need a bracha rishona. How much more so with the kal v'chomer if they return to their original location? This brisa that the Gemara is quoting now as Tanya Kavasi Rav Chizda addresses the issue of when they return to their place. Do they need a bracha rishona in order to continue eating? And that's even a lesser chiddush than Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda went as far as to say that not only are they covered in that original place, they're covered by the bracha that they recited, the bracha rishona, but that bracha rishona in the original place even covers them in a second location. That's as far as Rav Chizda went. But in the Gemara's mind, these two issues are the same. The question is one and the same. Is the original kviyas makom, as far as the bracha, still chal in such a way that all other makomos are considered connected to the original makom because that kviyas is still intact? Turn around, we learned in the price. Now we're going back to the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi about the Isra Achila on Erev Yontif, Erev Shabbos. If you remember, Rabbi Yossi was of the opinion that you could continue eating on Erev Shabbos even into darkness. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you have to be mafsik your su'uda. You cannot continue eating once it gets dark. Now the Gemara wants to know, what is the seder, the sequence of brachos for Kiddush and for Birkas HaMazon, according to these shitos of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi? So again, Rabbi Yossi says you can continue eating, and Rabbi Yehuda says you have to be mafsik. It was Erev Shabbos or Erev Yontif, and they were eating a Suda together with Kiddush Aleim Hayom. And now it became dark. And now they have to be mafsik their Suda, and they have to be Mavarech Birkas HaMazon. Now it's also the time for Kiddush. So the first question we're going to ask is, what comes first, Kiddush or Birkas HaMazon? And the Brisa says, Meviyim lo kol shel yain. The word lo here is referring to that person who's going to recite the Kiddush. The Omer of Kiddush Sayom. And then Visheni, they bring him a second course, the Omer of Birkas HaMazon. And he's going to recite Birkas HaMazon. And then he's going to now begin to eat a new Suda, which is a Sudas Shabbos Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So this is again the Shita Rabbi Yehuda, that if you started a meal On Erev Shabbos, you have to be mafsik when it gets dark. What's the Seder Advarim in brachos? First, you recite Kiddush on one kos. Then we bring you a second kos, and you recite Birkas Hamazon on the second kos. The Gemara is going to analyze on Daf Kuf Beis, Hamid Beis, why you need two kosos. And the second question we want to ask is, why does Kiddush Hayom come before Birkas Hamazon? After all, you're completing one Suda, which is the Suda's Chol, and then you're being Mekayim the mitzvah of Kiddush to welcome the Shabbos, and then continue with a new Suda, which is the Suda Shabbos. It would make sense that first you should complete the Suda of Chol, which generates a Chiyuv Birkas Hamazon, and then go on to Kiddush in honor of Shabbos. But apparently, we have the first principle, the main principle of Rabbi Yehuda is that we need a hefsek, and we have to complete the Sudas Shabbos, the Sudas Chol in order to begin a Sudas Shabbos. And those are two Sudos that do not integrate into one. They have to be separated. And we're going to explain later on why we need two kosos that I mentioned already before. And as far as the Seder Advarim here, it seems that Tchila Makadesh V'Achkach Mevarach Birkas Hamazon, that's the girsa that we have. The Rashbam has a different Lishna in his second Lishna, and Tosfos has in his first Lishna that Rishon Omer of Birkas Hamazon V'Sheni Omer of Kiddush Hayom. That Tchila first he should recite Birkas Hamazon in order to terminate his Sudas Chol, and then embark upon or commence his Sudas Shabbos by reciting Kiddush. So we were learning the Gemara and reading the Girsa of the text that Rashi has. The Rashbam has it in one Lishna, but the Rashbam has a second Lishna. Tosfos has that second Lishna of the Rashbam, that first you bring in the Koshel Birkas Hamazon, terminate your Sudas Chol, and then all systems are clear. You're ready to begin your Sudas Shabbos with Kiddush. I would only suggest, I don't have any proof of this, but just my intuition tells me that the reason why Kiddush Hayom should come first is because Kiddush Hayom is a time-generated mitzvah. Once there's Chashecha and Shabbos is entered, that itself, the Kiddush Hayom, generates a Chiyuv Kiddush. And we're not going to postpone that Chiyuv Kiddush. We're going to try to fulfill it at the first opportunity. Whereas Birkas Hamazon is not so time-bound. Whenever you eat your meal, it could be in the morning, in the evening, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, you have to recite Birkas Hamazon at its conclusion. It's not a time-generated mitzvah. And therefore, we give precedence, according to the Girsa that we have in our Gemara, which is Rashi's Girsa, to that which is time-sensitive or time-generated. So, Misha Chashecha, the first thing on your mind is Kiddush Hayom. The entry of Kiddush Hayom engenders a responsibility to be Makadesh the Yom. And that is now time urgent. Do it right now. And then you will get your chance and your opportunity to recite Birkas Hamazon. The other Rishonim might agree in principle, but they hold that Kiddush Hayom is only D'Rabbanan. The Kiddush D'Oraisa fulfills in davening, and the Kiddush Halakos is D'Rabbanan, and that has to pave way to Birkas Hamazon, which is D'Oraisa. But I don't think we have to go that far. I think we just simply say, first terminate your Sudas Chol, and now you're ready to commence your Sudas Shabbos with Kiddush. Rabbi Yossi Omer, you don't need to be mafsik your Suda at all in order to start a new Suda called Shabbos, but rather Ochel v'holech ad shetechshach. He continues eating, and even though it's dark out and Shabbos has entered, nevertheless he can complete his Suda. And it seems that Rabbi Yossi holds Ein Tzarich Lahafsik Klal Es HaSuda Afli Acher Kiddush Hayom, which means that according to Rabbi Yossi, you can have a Suda, the beginning of which is a Suda Schol, and the end of which is a Suda Shabbos. And even though it's one long Suda, it can combine and be classified under two different personalities. And then we have the middle of the road sheet, if you recall, which was Pores Mapa Umakadesh, in which, although it's technically one Su'uda, but nevertheless, we want to split the Suda into two parts. Suda Schol, then Suda Shabbos, and that's where we are Pores Mapa Umakadesh. And now we're going to turn to Daf Kuf Beis